The following is a conversation with Carlos Torres, a singer, guitarist, and frontman for many rock bands like SoCal Tennis Pros, Drywallero, and Fake Birds. Carlos talks about the importance of music in his life, having his band's album produced by the late Ikey Owens of Mars Volta and Jack White, and how he had many unorthodox and unique recording experiences. Afterwards, we'll have an aftershow. For those just tuning in to Pepe and Ybra for the first time, I'm Pepe, aka Joanna Glass, and Ybra, aka A. Perez, is my bandmate, and we are professional musicians who play in a two-piece rock band called Glass Spirits. This podcast will have guests who are musicians and professionals in the music and entertainment business. They'll have music tips, discuss issues in the music industry, what inspires them, and their creative process. Our current schedule will be to publish each episode every week. We have all the episodes filmed and in the can, so you'll definitely get an episode every week. If we get a positive response, we'll have a second season, so make sure you like, comment, rate, and review this podcast. The theme of this season is Voyager. Many of our guests have come from all over the world or they're transplants from across the country. And the voyage doesn't have to be physical. Many of them have had emotional and spiritual voyages as well. We have some very quick announcements. We won't always have sponsors, but when we do, we'll read their messages at the beginning of the episode so that the conversation is not interrupted. Do you play guitar? You probably know that being a good guitarist is not only about playing well, it's also about having a tasteful tone that is unique to you. So, if you're looking for something to give your sound an edge, look no further than X Gear guitar pedals, especially their latest line, the Illuminated series. X Gear pedals are designed by guitarists for guitarists with true bypass switching, pocket cue technology, an ergonomic slope, and illuminated knobs. I recently ordered the Gritman Overdrive. You can find my demo video on our YouTube channel, Music Tips by Pepe and Ybra. And I loved the sound. They've also got a variety of pedals for many music genres, like hard rock, metal, and soul. These pedals are available on Amazon.com, and for more info, go to xgear.com. That's ex-gear.com. Tell them that Pepe and Ybra sent you. If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe on YouTube, give it 5 stars, and leave a good review on Apple Podcasts. Support us on Patreon, and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or our website, pepeandybra.com. Now, without further ado, here's our conversation with Carlos Torres. All right, welcome to another episode of Pepe and Ybra. I am Pepe, aka Joanna Glass of the rock band Glass Spirits. This is my bandmate Ybra, aka Abe Perez, also my bandmate of Glass Spirits. I think I said that. I'll probably cut it out or leave it in. Anyways, and today we have with us a very special guest.
Where?
Oh, no. Take a compliment, man. This guy, it's very interesting how relationships and connections unfold throughout life. Probably about a few years ago, one of my friends kept bugging me to go to the Prospector in Long Beach to this show. He was seeing 2 bands. One was a solo artist and another was called SoCal Tennis Pros. I went to kind of support the other artist, but I loved SoCal Tennis Pros. I saw this band that had these punk songs. They were so energetic, and they had congas. The lead singer was using shakers, and it was an amazing fusion of Latin music and rock music, and the show was great. And so I went to another show, and I befriended the lead singer, and then we just kept in touch this whole time throughout the years, checking in with each other every once in a while with a couple cool phone calls about music and the music industry. And he is just so knowledgeable. I can't wait for him to talk about his story. But first, I'll introduce him formally or officially to my bandmate. This is the first time they're meeting. So, Abe, meet Carlos.
Hey, Carlos.
Carlos. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in today. Even off camera, you guys were hitting it off and exchanging really cool stories, and I was like, wait, let's save this for the podcast, and we'll see what I can salvage during the testing. So, but yeah, I mean, if you don't mind just kind of telling our audience about your musical journey. I think it's very unique, which is why your music is unique. And yeah, if I know you're from Colombia, and if you wouldn't mind just talking about that.
So, my name is Carlos Torres. I was born in Bogota, and my influences have always been, I think, like a lot of other people, their upbringing. So I grew up in a household that there was always a song on. There was always the record player playing, and it was, anywhere salsas, cumbias from all time periods in Colombia. My parents absolutely loved dancing in the living room and dancing with the kids. I think, like, hopefully most parents do. But I didn't get much of a musical experience other than Colombian music the first couple of years, except for the music from the United States of America that was popular through my older brothers. But it was still pretty narrow. I think, like, as I got older and I realized how important music was to me, because I was just constantly seeking it out. Then I started expanding my palette into a lot of things, to be quite honest. So let me just throw some names of really good Colombian groups. Fruco y sus Tesos, Lucho Bermudez, Afro Sound. And there's a million other ones. Then, by the time I got to junior high, that's when I started realizing I really wanted to play an instrument. By the time I got to the junior high, I was able to grab my first guitar. And then the music that really spoke to me was punk rock, like Old Bad Religion, Dead Kennedys, because it was the same idea of social justice, but now it was something that I could actually practice my guitar and, engaged with more. So it was a real struggle to, like, pave my own way. But I did. I mean, I didn't really think twice about it. It was like I always went towards things that, like, had more meaning to me. And at that moment, it was, the East Bay scene, what they were doing with, like, talking about things like clean syringes, talking about, like, rights for homosexuals, talking about, I mean, everything, getting out of the Reagan era and talking about the damage that had been done in the communities with, whether it was discussions of, like, how AIDS people were treated, how the crack epidemic, these were, like, punk rock kids that were singing about that stuff while everybody else in my high school was, playing sports. So.
Okay. We actually had a previous guest on our podcast. Her name is Laura Valle. She's from Argentina, and one of the things she said was that she grew up surrounded by tango, and she herself rebelled when she was young, in a way by going towards rock music. And also there was an issue with censorship in Argentina back in the day. And so I don't know if Colombia had any kind of similar issues or anything, maybe political that was going on.
Well, I mean, I was pretty much raised in the United States of America in California, but I definitely identify as Colombian. That's my culture. That's what I was raised to be. And I've spent a lot of time in Colombia.
Mm.
So that's a whole other conversation that I could probably talk about for a few years, which is the politics in Colombia, because I know it personally. And it's a very sad one, to be quite honest, even for my family personally. So as far as censorship, I mean, the most I want to get into it is that there was always there's this thing in Colombia called La Violencia, which happened where one of the first indigenous leaders was elected and then they assassinated him. And then it really split the Colombian politics from like super leftist to super conservative. And that was a war that lasted like 60 plus years. The politics of Colombia is a very dark history that we could go on about, but I've like learned that it's probably not the best type of conversation to have.
Yeah, maybe we can, talk about it off air, when we meet and the pandemic isn't awful. So, yeah. So, yeah, if you don't mind, if kind of going back to now, you've been in the States, you're 20 years old, and you're getting into punk rock music. So can you talk about kind of like the formation of SoCal Tennis Pros and gathering the right mix of musicians who'd be so open minded to combine congas and punk rock.
Cool. So I'm just gonna before I get to SoCal, the reason why I had any success in music was when I was involved in the East Bay punk scene. I started a band called Polkai Number 33, and we were able to be on a record with Jeff Ott and his band 15, which if you know who they are, then you just know who they are. I mean, they were like the guys that taught Green Day, basically. But when you were in it, you were very, like, I nerded out all the time with all the people that I met, because to me, they were all fascinating. Like when I met Omar and Cedric, I talked to Omar more, but he came to my house, like in Norwalk. I think there was like a drive-by shooting on my street, and he was like terrified. But
Oh man.
but it was like one of those things where like we played in a bowling alley, like it was just super punk rock stuff. But these people then obviously at the drive-in got signed by Grand Royale, by the Beastie Boys, and they became at the drive-in. And then when they broke up, they became the Mars Volta. But I met them through a band called Coleco. And then I got the itch to start playing in SoCal Tennis Pros randomly, because I moved to Fullerton and I went to my neighbor's house and I basically told him, hey, I play loud music and please don't call the cops. Like if it ever bothers you, or, if it's too much, like let me know, and, don't call the cops. But that happened to be John Erickson, who lived there, who became the drummer of SoCal. So it was by sheer coincidence that he was there. They basically told me, they're like, oh, there's a guy that plays drums here. So me and him got together, and John Erickson is like the easiest guy to be friends with in the world. So at that point, we had a party at my house, and it was with a lot of different musicians. And, just to kind of like name drop, like we had the guys from the Garden here. We had a Fiddler. I guess they were on K-Rock or something. They're like a huge band. They played in my backyard. So I had some really crazy parties, like where there was like, I do not mean to exaggerate, like 500 people at my house, people jumping off the roof of my house, stage diving, like
Wow.
where 14 cop cars came to one of them, helicopters. It was nuts. In that situation, in one of those parties, this kid basically posted, because it was like, I think it was still MySpace or maybe the beginnings of Facebook. He posted, I went to this Brad party, and I don't remember what happened, but I woke up in someone's car wearing a bunny mask. And that was like the bunny mask from my house. So I wrote him back and I was like, hey dude, like, glad you had a good time. Can you like bring back my stuff, you know? And he was like, sure. And he came down to my house that day and we hit it off. We just played music all day. And that was Riley Youngdahl. There was another guy named Chris. He was in our band for like a very short minute and then decided he had to pursue his career. He was like, sure, my friend plays bass. He's going to be your new bassist. And I actually knew the guy, Sean, who's an awesome dude too. He's a super funny guy. So that's how like the SoCal that became the main SoCal. In between all that, we had a lot of other musicians, but they didn't last for one reason or another, or you know, just how musicians are. Why it's so much easier to just be a two-piece. From there, so that's when we started playing shows. And when we really were playing shows, you know, we were fortunate enough to be playing, I think one year we played a show a week for a whole year, which is a lot.
Great. Yeah.
But that's basically how the band that most people know as SoCal became SoCal, Tennis Pros. So.
Yeah. That's great. And actually, I wanted to mention off air, you and Abe were talking about a few things. And when you were just describing what SoCal, or I was trying to describe what SoCal Tennis Pros sound was, and I might have said like, you know, Latin punk or punk rock with Latin infusion. And then Abe here was just saying, I can't, you know, imagine those two things. And then there's a band that came to Abe's mind, and I don't know if you want to talk about what you thought.
They're not punk, but they infuse Latin, is Mars Volta, with all the different styles they play. And when you mentioned that you put in the percussion with punk music, I told you that I can't even imagine. I would love to hear stuff that you've done, because I'm like real curious, you know, how, okay, like for example, I grew up with Santana, and what they've done is they've put in a lot of the Cuban rhythms in rock. And that's what he's done. No matter what song it is, you hear a bunch of percussion, whether it's Evil Ways, whether it's something like Soul Sacrifice, which is more percussion oriented. The timings, you know, of that song is more Latin, but they'll have like rock, you know, beats that are like straightforward 4/4, and he throws all this percussion in. So they made it work, and obviously he's one of the biggest bands ever, and they've done what they've done, and he just keeps doing different things like that. That one album he did with Rob Thomas doing Smooth. That album had all kinds of, you know, hip hop, all kinds of stuff in it, man. You know? Yeah. So Carlos has always been one person to really not have any boundaries, you know. And so what you're saying that you guys do with your band, I can't wait to hear it myself.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'll play it after the podcast. Oh, I'm sorry. What?
I said I hope you enjoy it, or thank you for listening to even take the time or care.
Oh yeah, no, I like listening to music, and it's always refreshing. Like when I told you my son and his mom went to see System of a Down. They were the headliners. They knew nothing about Mars Volta. When they came home and they told me, oh my God, you know, System of a Down was great, but you should have seen the opening act. And then my son started playing their music, and I'm like, wow, that they're just so different, you know. And their drummer, which is what I mainly am as a drummer, I do percussion because it's in my blood. My dad was a professional and he had all these guys over always and partying, and I heard him banging on the glasses and doing those Cuban beats I was showing you, and you have another guy, on top of that, and the claves and all that. So that was already in my brain, I already had that up here. So when I met Joanne and I heard some of the stuff she had, I'm like, I can incorporate my percussion in her stuff. And when we have a show, I bring a drum set and a percussion setup. So I'll be on the cajon or the congas or the bongos. And sometimes it's within the same song. I run off my drums and go to the percussion at an ending, or sometimes it'll be an all percussion acoustic song. So that's what we do. We mix it up. And on the recording, has he heard our album?
I know you guys covered a Depeche Mode song.
Yeah.
I also feel like a lot of, again, the idea that you guys are a two-piece is great. It's stuff. But just because you're a two-piece, you guys can really have the full gamut of like ideas and creativity, because there's not two melodies trying to fit or play off of each other. Whereas you have like with two guitars, like someone's got to lead and someone's got to follow, right? But you as and then the drummer, you can have your breaks and add the percussive element to it. Also in recordings and stuff like that. I think with your music, what I get a lot of is like a 80s aesthetic, as far as like the kind of playing, the way you guys sing, which obviously I'm actually so I'm in another band called Drywallero, and our bassist is not a fan of 80s music, but he's trying to get there. But I'm a huge fan of 80s music, and that's something that like I said, I played Michael Jackson when I was younger, but then there was like a huge like Cure, Depeche Mode, Susie and the Banshees.
Yeah.
For me to like even pigeonhole what kind of music I listen to is, it's not really representative. I dive into as much as I humanly can dive into, because that's just keeps me going. You know what I mean? And if I can find something new, then I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole. So what I think about like when you guys write music and that aesthetic, it's like just those pop sensibilities and trying to find it and try to like capture like those songs, which I think a lot of 80s stuff did. But obviously you guys have a little more world music type feel to it as well. So bravo to you guys as well.
Oh,
thank you.
Thanks. We try. I mean, especially as a two-piece band, if we have to almost I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Abe, like compensate for the fact that we can just only play two instruments at a time. So one song he'll be on percussion and I'll be on acoustic guitar, then I'll switch off and run over and play the keyboard, and then run over and play, then he'll go to his cajon, and then I'll run over and play violin, because not for the sake of just keeping the audience's attention, but just to provide as much substance and interesting musical content as we can, as at the end of the day, like we're entertainers, so yeah.
That's the weird part, right? The entertainer part. Because I'm the kind of guy that would be so comfortable being at home just writing songs for me, and
right.
About anything else. But I've been fortunate enough that like I play with people who have toured a lot and done a lot of things where it's like it forces me to get out of my shell and like try to nurture the performer side as well, which I mean, if I have to be honest, musically the performer side is like my least favorite thing to do in the world. Because when I'm playing, I'm not thinking about anybody or anything else. I'm just playing. So, and I was listening to the Argentinian girl, the interview where you guys had mentioned something about like, you know, when you're performing, like sometimes like, you know, getting out of your head because you see someone who's there that you might know, or you know,
Yeah.
like all that kind of stuff. I think that's why I just dive into my brain when I'm playing music, because I don't want to know that anybody's out
Yeah.
there, because it's hard. I mean, some people thrive on that, you know. Some people want to do karaoke all day because they want to perform. Some people like being the center of attention. That's it might sound strange because I've been doing bands and music and in front of people for so long, but that's not my interest. But I have to be part of a group, and a lot of other people in my group have those aspirations. So just by default, I have to try, and that's like the area that I have to try and work more out, which is like being a better performer. Yeah. So
Yeah, definitely. I completely understand, because I'm naturally very introverted, and I'd rather put a paper bag over my head. But Abe's like, you're the front person, you gotta, and so over the years I've kind of just like learned to work work the crowd in certain ways, and I just look at it as it's part of the job, and a job that I do at the end of the day enjoy. And we're in this band because, not because we want to make a lot of money, or I mean, yeah, that would be nice to pay our bills, but we do this and we suffer through like a lot of hardships because we love the music at the end of the day. Now,
you're gonna do it anyways, right?
Yes, we would do it anyways if there was no YouTube, no cameras, no nothing. So yeah, Abe had mentioned a band, Mars Volta, and there's a connection between Mars Volta and your band and the recording process. And if you would like to tell our audience what that connection is and the creation of the SoCal Tennis Pros album.
Yeah, thank you. So the keyboardist, pianist, multi-instrumentist.
Multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah. Ikey Owens, who, if you don't know who he is, you should definitely know who he is. He's two-time Grammy Award winner. He, did guest songs on Sublime, was most famous for Mars Volta and Jack White. Basically, he is just a extraordinary virtuoso pianist, and unfortunately he passed away. But it's really, he's a just this incredible, I'm going to say he is, because he's here forever. Even though, his vessel might not be here. And it's just my own opinion, but I don't want to talk about him in the past. He is this amazing light of a person who just, I think me and him shared a lot of like the same journeys, but obviously he got a lot luckier and was much more talented. So we got along instantly. And he's somebody who was a staple in Long Beach. And I lived in Long Beach for like 12 years. So he was the guy that everybody knew because of obviously like his resume as far as music. I mean, I would say, and I don't think it's just my opinion, but the opinion of many others, that for our generation, he's going to be one of the most famous like pianists because Mars Volta, Jack White, you know what I mean? Like, who gets that lucky? And that being said, he lived in Long Beach and he was a local legend. And I had seen him at, bars and clubs, and never really talked to him because it's kind of, I think, because when you grow up in California and LA, like you do run into famous people, and you kind of just learn that like, let them be them, and you're not going to ask for autographs or try to, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
give them their peace and private time. But that being said, throughout those Long Beach years, I ran into him. And he was somebody who, like, by the time I was in SoCal, I don't even know if he knew my name, but obviously I knew his name, but I would see him and he would see me, and we would always like say hi to each other and be cordial. And we would talk about the few times he was at my house, just with like different friends. And that was like the combination. Probably SoCal, we did our first tour, like a West Coast tour, and it was a total debacle. But when we came back, our first show ever was at Alex's bar, and it was with the Lions. And I don't know if you guys know who the Lions are, but they're another band that you should check out, and they should be famous. And I hope one day they will be, because they are mind-blowingly good. So we played with them, and I was fortunate enough to be in a car with like Dennis Owens, who's from the Goodfoot, who is another legend. I've just been really fortunate to be around people that I truly like admire. So we had Malik Moore, who was one of the singers of the Lions. We had Dennis Owens, and then we had Ikey and myself. And I mean, I can't even, it's one of those things where like when I was in the car, I was like, my mind was blown, but everybody else in the car was like, hey, what's up guys? Cause they all knew each other through different scenes and stuff musically. So basically we had played a show with the Lions and at Alex's bar. And at one moment in time, towards the end of the evening, I was in a car with Dennis Owens, Malik Moore, and Ikey Owens. And we were all just dialoguing, chatting, and that's when I would say Ikey became a little bit more of a friend than an acquaintance. Then, again, SoCal got some traction, and we started playing a lot of different shows everywhere, and we played a pretty good show. Basically, there's a band called Plague Vendor. They're on Epitaph now. Super cool dudes, we played with them at Alex's bar, and we played after them, and they were like the big band. So that being said, I was wasted by the time we played. And when I played, I just put it all out there. And then when the night ended, I went into the back of Alex's bar to, do the payout and stuff like that. And Ikey just was very generous in his praise of what he had just seen. So then he said, I'm going to record you guys. I'm going to produce you guys. Whoa. You guys are my new favorite band. And I was just like, at that point, SoCal had a lot of offers from a lot of people. But the way music is like people tell you things and then it sort of dissipates in some way or another. And, again, I if somebody's drunk telling me things I want to hear, that's great. But it really doesn't count until it's like the AM or, early PM hours and you're actually having a real conversation with somebody about moving forward on something. So that being said, I told the guys in the band, I was like, dude, I just talked to Ikey and he loves it and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not even like gonna act like it's anything more than I'll just take it as like a compliment for that night.
Yeah.
And leave it at that.
Didn't want to get your hopes up.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, that was enough, like awesome, and then he hit me up a few days later and he called me and it was, like noon. And he was just like, dude, don't think I forgot about what I told you. Like, wow. I really want to do something with you and we need to be like very serious about this. And then, and then I was like, he's like, I still, he's like, basically I'll jump to, that week we had been asked to do an interview for the OC Weekly. And, I'll just add that this is the only time I've ever been on a podcast or done an interview where I wasn't wasted either. Yeah.
Oh, we feel special. Thank you.
So somewhere along the lines, like I basically told the OC Weekly that like we were going to be produced and recorded by Ikey Owens, and they were like, bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, no, you're not. You know, like this guy's a legend. Sorry for cussing, but you know, like that was like the response I got. And then after they were like, you know, we're gonna have to do a background check on that because that's not, you know, we interview bands all the time and nobody has that as like their resume. And I was like, I get it, you know. And then he called me and he was like, I got a call from the OC Weekly, and they said that you had mentioned in an interview that I was going to be producing you. And I was like, yeah, I did. I was pretty wasted. I know we haven't done anything official yet. And he's like, well, you know what? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, it's official. And I was
wow,
like,
awesome.
Yeah. And then I saw an article in Rolling Stones that was talking about that a lot of musicians were moving to Nashville, and Nashville was like the new next like place for musicians. Even though it's always been the place for musicians, it was like this like new resurgence. And in the article, it said that Ikey Owens was going to move to Nashville, and so I was like, you know, I mean, all I can say is like selfishly, I was like, my window is just narrowed. Because this guy said he wants to do something with me, but like he's moving to Nashville. So then I called him and I was like, hey dude, like you know, blah blah blah, like I still want to do something, and I'll be straight up with you, like I read you were moving to Nashville. And he was like, first off, he was like, yeah, of course, I'm ready, like let's book studio time, let's go to the compound, you know, which the Mars Volta actually recorded some stuff at the compound too, as did like Chicano Batman and a lot of other famous, wonderful musicians.
Was that the studio? I'm sorry, was that the studio in Long Beach or?
It is. And Antoine is I don't know if guru is the right thing to label him, but he's just this incredible guy who's done everything, including worked at Capitol. And so that being said, after it was all done and we had everything ready, I was just like, you know what? I have to be honest with you. The reason why I hit you up right now is because I heard you were moving to Nashville. And he's like, dude, I'm already there. He's like, I've been living there for like the last month. He's like, that interview was last month. And he still like came down. He flew down. I would pick him up from the airport. We would do pre-production stuff as far as like getting the songs in order. So, you know, obviously as much as we had our songs written the way they were written, he's the kind of guy that you just listen to, you know, like he says, well, you might want to tweak this here or like shorten this or do whatever you're going to do, like, and individually to like all the musicians in the band, kind of give his critiques so that when we get into the studio, we knew what we were doing. Yeah. So I meet Antoine and it's like, you know, 9 a.m. or 10 at the compound. And he's like, so you're going to be working with Ikey? And I was like, yeah. He's like, that's a pretty big thing. And I was like, oh, I know, I'm honored. He's like, I watched something of yours on YouTube last night. He's like, I have to say, I am not impressed.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, I totally understand. He's like, but you know what? If Ikey has faith in you, then I'm going to listen.
Wow.
And I always remind Anton about that because now we have a much different relationship. And, you know, he's an incredible human being too. But so that being said, we went into the studio, we recorded the album. There's a lot that went to do with it. The fact that like some highlights, you know, I had been in the studio a lot at this point because I had been in the studio with a lot of punk bands, and you know, the punk band recording ethic is much different than like a guy that plays the Jack White and the Mars Volta. So with him, it was all like he knew, you know, exactly between him and Antoine, they knew what amps we were going to use. Like we didn't use any of our own amps. Everything was like, okay, you're using like a 1960s Supra from Japan for the treble, and then on the bottom is going to be a bassman from like the 70s Fender, and between the two you're going to run it through this effect, and that's going to be your guitar tone. And then the other guitarist, he's like, you use a Vox, right? And I don't know the brand of Vox, but it's a very popular one, like a professional one. I mean, they were like, this is like how insanely in sync they were, and like just how much experience they had. He was like, okay, well, that Vox that you have, we have the one from like 1962 or something, and don't quote me on the year, but he's like, and this one was before they changed the, like, you know, the sound range. So they're like, now they make them where they cut out like certain decibels, but you're going to use the original one that has the full spectrum of decibels. And so, you know, we used their drum set, tuned by Antoine, already ready to go. And it was, oh my God, Josh Freese's drum set. Vandals, you know, I mean, a million other things, but like, so it was just like, whoa, now we're playing on this dude's drum set too.
Wow.
And we went in there, and Ikey was like, just orchestra conductor, like, this is what you do. This is how you do it. This is the tempo that's going to be done. And you do it until you do it right. And we had songs that we did in 2 takes and songs that we did in 18 takes. You know what I mean? And,
so I'm curious, when you do 18 takes, do you punch in the middle, or you start from the top?
Start from the top, and 18 takes is like the end of the day, and then the beginning of the next day, because the end of the day you're like on take number like 15, and you're like, okay, all 15 takes are crap, and then you're obviously done for the day, and we need to come back the next day and then capture it. And in fact, I will, a little bit of insight onto that, like, it was basically a song that, and a credit to Antoine, was that like, it was a song that we had probably played for a year, but the drummer, John Erickson, he just couldn't get it right, because it's a long song, and yeah, they want to do it in 1 take, unless there's like a break where you can like easily splice it, but you know what I mean? Like, you want that energy, right?
Yeah.
So after we finished an unsuccessful take of that song, Antoine basically started showing John different variations of how he could play that song so that he could achieve it and it would sound good. So it's like on the spot, like, this guy is teaching us a different way of playing. He's like, and you're going to play it like this tomorrow, and this is the way it's going to go. And then we did it, because we're, you know, I know musicians are known for having egos, but in a situation like ours, there was no ego. It was like, these people are gods to us, and we're going to listen to everything they say. There's no good suggestion that we could possibly give, because they've seen it all, done it all, and they know what works. And that's a time for us to learn, really. And I feel like great. I've learned a lot in being friends with, you know, Antoine in that type of studio setting, just by sitting and listening, you know. So when we finished everything, it was then we met up then to just do some mix downs and stuff. And then unfortunately, he was going to come back and meet with us another weekend, and he passed away in Mexico on tour with Jack White. And that was obviously horrible for a million reasons, mostly because the way I saw him at that point was like, he was like a new mentor to me, and obviously a friend. And then that album, seriously, us as a band, we just got shelved for a year, like, and because it was just out of respect, you know, like, we're not going to go and do anything with it. And then when we finally got back together, we finished the album, but as a band, we pretty much never really went forward with it and never really got it released. So it's on YouTube, but like, if you go to Ikey's discography of his producer credits, we're on the last line, and it says unreleased. Even though we released it on YouTube, it was never really released.
Yeah.
We didn't tour it. We didn't promote it. It was just one of those albums that, which kind of goes back to, in my mind, the experience that I had with him. Everything that we did, everything that we learned, the final result, that's more than enough. You know, it's more than I could have ever asked for.
Yeah. Wow. That's really sad what happened with Ikey, but it sounds like, you know, he touched you guys and had a huge impact on your lives and your sound. Um and I guess a lot, you know, I've met some bands, some pretty good kind of unsigned bands who like really try to, I don't know if name drop is the term, but it's like they use their producer's credit to be like, okay, hey, our album was produced by this and this, and you know, I'm not gonna, you know, name those bands or those producers. And both times it just I guess because they had the intention of using the name, relying on the name, and having expectations of success from it. There was one not so positive experience of a friend's band who they paid this songwriter of this pretty big band within their niche or genre of music, and there wasn't very much care about the mix down of their tracks, and everyone in the band was like complaining about how certain solos were cut off, it wasn't mixed good, all kinds of things. And yeah, I can see that being a reason to not want a kind of like a big name producer attached to your project, because at the end of the day, if you're so unhappy with how it actually turned out, it's you don't have that intrinsic motivation to like want to promote it, and it's just kind of like a letdown in a way, you know. But it doesn't seem to be a case with you guys, because from what I heard, it sounds great. I mean,
and we didn't change anything. Once what Ikey did is what you hear. And that was obviously a decision that we all agreed with. It was like, maybe it would have been a little different, but you know, when we finished the last time we saw him, we were all really good about what we had. And, you know, I think, again, the take that we had going in was like, we're a punk band and we're going to try to capture that raw energy and be that band captured live as much as humanly possible. There are some more things I want to add about the recording session, just because there were some highlights.
Okay.
One of the, like, for example, the one thing that you don't do with the whole band is the vocals. You do the scratch vocals, but most of it you have to retake. So with him, it was like getting me, and that was like day 3 in the studio. It was getting me to a point where I could perform and they were going to capture it. And so that started with like, you know, a bottle of whiskey, where he's like, you're going to take, you know, he's going to give me a glass. It was like whiskey and Sriracha. And that was another thing. It was whiskey, lime, and Sriracha. And that was the thing that would help clear your throat.
Oh, okay.
And let you last longer. But also he was like, but you're also going to take like shots after, like before you start a song and when you're done with the song. So when you hear the album, and I say it in full sincerity, I probably remember singing the first 4 songs. And I think there's 10 songs on that album. I blacked out. And I remember like just when I finally heard the mix and everybody in the band was like, dude, it was like, you know, they were all impressed. I was like, I'm glad you guys were impressed and I'm glad we got something, because I don't remember any of it. I remember just like after the 3rd one being like, oh my God, I'm like, I can barely breathe because it's a lot of energy and output. You know, I mean, you get in the zone and then taking shots and then just being in it. At some point, it was like the next morning and I was like, oh my God, I hope, like, I remember waking up thinking, I hope I didn't like waste, hours
Wow.
on like just garbage. And then when they played it back and they were all stoked on it, and I mean like Antoine and Ikey, I was like, thank God. So I thought that was one of those moments in the studio that was that really stood out.
I would have never thought of combining whiskey and sriracha. That's a very interesting combination. I okay, well, I mean, I'm not much of a drinker. I mean, I'm Asian, so I'm missing some enzymes. So I have half a bottle of Smirnoff and I'm out. So I don't think I can use that technique when we record, and Abe wouldn't appreciate it. So he'd just be waiting for me. But yeah, that sounds like you guys had fun, and that was a very interesting process. So yeah.
And then like on the last the evening, one of the evenings, he basically had a friend who was like this incredible chef named Martin, and came over and basically cooked a meal for all of us.
Nice.
It was like a 6-course meal, just something ridiculous. So, I mean, the level of like care that they took, that Ikey had towards the whole situation was incredible. And then lastly, because I think this is another thing about the album that is really special. He plays keyboards on about 5 songs on the album. And that was something that we had never discussed and never talked about in any of the pre-production. But when we got there, after we recorded on like the first day, he basically was like, hey man, he's like, I have these songs in my head all the time. He's like, can I just please play piano on these songs? And we were like, are you kidding me? Like, dude, you wouldn't even have to ask. You just go up there and start playing, and we'd be like, okay, lower all our stuff down and just be like all Ikey, and he did. And I can tell you that everything that you hear, almost everything, but I think everything that he played that you hear, he did in one shot, like never practicing with us.
Wow.
And there are some songs on there that he's just from beginning to end going nuts. And it's just, I mean, every song he played on, he just elevated it so much more. And, that was incredible to see, I mean, literally like the next week after we had done the first recording, I went and saw him in New York, but, playing with Jack White, and, in front of like 80,000 people, and they're like doing dueling piano guitar solo back to back. And I'm like, dude, I was just in the studio with him, and he's like on our album, and like super nice, caring, like charismatic dude, like I've ever met, regardless of who he is. And it was, so again, I do want to point that out. And then other people that get credit, there's a gentleman that played some percussion on there as well, named Andrew. I can't remember his last name right now, but he's amazing. He like learned how to play percussion under Tito Puentes's grandson. And then London Guzman, who is probably more known now because he is the saxophone player for the Buttertones. He also played on about 4 or 5 of the SoCal songs that you hear. And just again, like the caliber of people that Ikey brought in, the experience, the fact that he played, the fact that I can tell you without it, you heard it here first. He did it all in one shot, everything he played on there, and it was just spectacular playing. So that's other stuff that I want to add to the recording that really made, I mean, I can't say enough about that whole experience. And I don't talk about it enough, but I think it's appropriate to talk about it here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, those stories and anecdotes. And that's interesting that you mentioned earlier that you guys wanted to sound as live as possible, and that was our goal as well with our music. And when we recorded our album, we rehearsed it enough where we can just hit record, and there's certain tempo changes and punches, and sometimes there's parts and sections that were slower. And so when we get to the pickup before that changed in the section, we look at each other and we nod and we just like sink in. And I'm just curious, and
I was
we
listening
kind of
to
like,
your live album. That's like your latest release, right? The live album.
oh, the live album that's on Spotify. Okay, that was like done at this live TV show that we did, and we just decided. I mean, they gave us the tracks and we mixed it. Yeah, they did that as a courtesy, and it's like, wow, we have the individual tracks and we have this video. We just mixed it and put it out there. But no, we're actually coming out with another live album that we've produced, a few months ago. But yeah, for our actual album, which isn't released yet, but we've recorded it. We've had a soft release, but not all the songs are digitally released. So when we recorded our album Mysteries of Rhythm, we made the concerted effort that we wouldn't use like a click track. We only have a click track on one song that had like samples, and so we needed to like be in sync with that. But other than that, there's like an ebb and flow of the tempo within a certain range. It doesn't go too crazy, but we would just like look at each other and be in sync. And so so that's interesting what you said about Ikey, is that he hasn't been playing with you, and you guys, from what it sounds like, didn't program a click track, so he just did everything by ear or like from memory of the songs from listening to it. Was that kind of how he did it?
Yeah, we did try our best to do on a click track, but still keep it raw. You know what I mean? Also,
Okay.
as a band, we had already been playing for years, I think like 2 years.
Yeah.
So the hardest part is playing raw with that kind of energy and on a click track. And and I'm gonna out John right now. One of the funniest moments in the studio was that like we couldn't get, like, when we first started, he was off a lot. And basically like we couldn't figure out why, and we're like, oh man, we're really gonna have a problem with the click track, because we never practiced with the click track or anything, and it was just like a new experience. And for John, another thing that I have to point out, when you listen to the SoCal album, John, the drummer, that's the first band he ever played drums on, which I think is amazing, because like I play drums, but nowhere near like the way he plays them. And John now is just like an incredible drummer. But when we first started, he was a percussionist. He had never like sat behind, like, I'm sure he did, but he had never professionally or like with a band played on a drum set. So the evolution to get to the point where it's like now we're playing these really like phonetic songs that are like on a click track, that are like super fast punk rock songs. Like,
wow.
At first we thought, we'll see if we can do it or not. And when we first started off, we realized pretty quickly that we might not be able to play to a click track. But then what we found out was that John was playing to his own click track that he had brought, and tried to sync his click track with Antoine's click track. And that's impossible, like, because like no matter how precise you are, if you're playing to two click tracks that you basically just press play on both of them, at some point they're off. Like, I don't, it sounds easy enough, press play on both of them, but like one might be too, like, a fraction of a second sooner than the other. So by the time we were in the middle of a song, John was hearing his click track and we were hearing a different click track. And we were like, what's going on with John? He doesn't know, like, he can't do it. And then he was just like, he's like, let's try it again. And we're like, what? Like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, well, I have my click track. And we're like, dude, and they just busted. And, for someone like Ikey and Antoine, it was like, they had never heard of such a thing though. Like this guy's trying to play to 2 click tracks at the same time. So then finally, after we realized that happened, John actually busted them out really, really well. And, the song that I mentioned 18 times, like I said, it was because it was the end of the day. And it was a much longer song. So to be on a click track being on a click track for a 2-minute song is much different than on a 4-minute song. Like you just get tired, and I'd imagine. But but that was another anecdote of the studio where like literally everybody was on the floor rolling, like just like, I can't believe this guy thought he could play to 2 different click tracks.
Wow, that's a trip. I mean, it's can be tricky enough just playing to a click track. Yeah. And Abe has like a lot of interesting stories about playing to a click track. He's before we met, he's been playing drums professionally for 20, 30 years, and you've recorded tons of albums for other, like he's been like hired to be the session drummer. And I mean you told me earlier that it kind of took a minute for you to learn how to, I mean, you've always been a good drummer, but it took a minute for you to like learn how to get used to hearing the click and drumming to the click.
Well, the first time I tried it, I couldn't do it because I'd never done it. So if you've never done it, you can't just sit down and play to a click. I mean, you just can't. So I was in a studio, and the deal with that was everything was pre-recorded to a click. I didn't know that. I thought we were going to play live, but when I got in there, I was surprised, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So we stopped the session, and I learned how to play to a click, and but it didn't. It wasn't like something I did right away. It took a while. Like I don't know, like couple of weeks of practicing. Yeah, a couple of weeks of practicing straight with it. Not just doing a beat, to do fills and be able to like end the fills. It was a whole different world. Yeah. And if you have music like us that has tempo changes, it's all about feel. And there's no rules to that kind of stuff. It's, if you want to speed up, if you want to speed up, it's your song, you can do it. If you want to, normally I haven't slowed down like her idea, but once I tried it, and now when I hear the song, it vibes. It's supposed to be like we're doing what we're doing, all of a sudden we're like going in this other mood and mode and tempo that has nothing to do with the other part of the song, but it all fit. And so her idea fit, even though I wasn't hearing it or feeling it, but when I played it, I go, yeah, okay, I can dig that. I see where you're coming from, Yeah,
and that's the beauty of collaboration, is just trying new things. And we have different musical backgrounds, and so we kind of like collaborated and compromised to fuse our backgrounds and life experience and musical experience. And So yeah, if I would like to transition to kind of like a new era of your music after SoCal Tennis Pros. So after you released your album with SoCal Tennis Pros, then you went into Drywallero, or was there anything else before that, or?
Yeah, so after SoCal, that band ended so unceremoniously. You don't even know.
Oh.
We were supposed to play a show, like we didn't play for like a year, and then we like got this show that was like gonna be at Alex's bar and like hyped up, and it was gonna be like either A, our return, or B, our last show ever. And then that show fell through, and we're like, you know what? And we literally like announced it at like 6:30, our last show ever, at 7:00 at a coffee house, and we like destroyed that coffee house. I thought we did great, but it was like no flyers, no, like like, hey, our last show's in 30 minutes at this coffee shop that nobody knows. You're either going to be there or you're not. And then when we were done, it was like, that's it. And we never played again.
Oh, wow.
But I'm super happy with that too, you know, like it did. I'd rather those things end like that than, you know, because a lot of stuff that's beyond your control, you know what I mean? Like at some point you just like, you have to let it go. After all that, John and me, since SoCal ended, there was still that Latin element where John Erickson, the drummer, and me were like still kind of like throwing ideas around. Because there was, with SoCal, it became a little bit of a divide with like everybody we would meet. They would be like, dude, I love the punk rock stuff. I hate the Latin stuff. And then they'd be like, dude, I love the Latin stuff. I hate the punk rock stuff. Like, because there was like there were songs that were just cumbias, songs that were just punk songs.
Mm.
Yeah. And so it was like this division of like, you know, like, and to me, that's cool, right? Like, I'm just glad anybody likes any of it. You know, Drywallero basically manifested where I was already feeling like I just want to be in a band that, you know, go back to my roots, like a cumbia band, that like I can be an old man. You know, I had just gone to Cuba. I had just seen one of the dudes from Buena Vista Social Club playing at a little restaurant that you know, it was like maybe 5 people there, and he just like showed up and brought a band and they just played there, and I was like blown away. And it was like, I want that. I want to be that guy. Like this guy could be traveling the world, but he's like, screw it. I'm just going to play here because like, this is where I eat and like, just get it going. And so for me, it was like Drywallero was like a retirement band. And, but it wasn't anything. It was literally just, there was no idea, no like grandeur to it. It was just, had a few ideas, and I still had a few punk song ideas too. And then my friend Dave Tibbetts, who is the guitarist of Drywallero, he ended up, I hadn't seen that guy in like 10 years. He stayed with me for a month, and that month it was like summertime, drinking, poolside, like here's these cumbia things, and he's this virtuoso guitarist that can do anything, like he, you know, Zappa, King Crimson type like level of guitar playing. And then from there it was like he wrote songs, I showed him songs, we collaborated, we ended up getting John from Nope to play bass. And then we found a drummer, Isaac, who's in a band called Stormhouse. This guy just happened to be like by us. We invited him over. He dug the vibe. And then that's when Drywallero as a band officially started. Because it was like, again, nobody was looking for it, but all the pieces just fit. And everybody had the same idea in the direction. And now it's been 3 years, and we've been blessed, fortunate, lucky enough to have played with some incredible bands at incredible places. That being said, the last thing that I know you had mentioned that you heard Fake Birds.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, there's only 3 songs out, right? Is that correct?
It's 4 songs. Yeah, it's an EP.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But that is like basically when I think about Drywallero and Fake Birds, it's like those would have been SoCal. But like they finally like just SoCal finally became its own punk band and its own cumbia band. And I really that ride, because I've been talking a lot, and I'm sorry, everybody.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that ride has just been, you know, incredible for me, and I don't take it lightly. Like I don't claim to be anybody. My day job is helping families, and that to me is more important than anything I've ever done musically. And but yeah, here we are. I've done a lot of stuff that I've been fortunate to be able to be a part of with a lot of different musicians, and I'm talking to you guys on a podcast, and only because of the stuff I've been fortunate enough to do. So thank you.
Abe just had to step out and take care of a couple things. and that's the thing. We, I think society is becoming more self-aware of how important self-care is, especially in the entertainment industry, because we're seeing all kinds of celebrities coming out with stories about, being pushed to the max, whether it's like performing too much or doing too much, and then it takes a toll on mental health or health. I mean, that's not the case with Abe. He just has something to do right now. But yeah, we just have to take care of ourselves. And then I'm just wondering, from all the bands that you've been in, it sounds like you're kind of coming full circle, going back to your roots, whether it's like identifying back to who you are, or who you kind of like where your origins were, or just kind of listening to yourself, and what your needs are in your life right now. Can you kind of, as a nice way to send our audience off, do you have any messages to musicians out there who might just be like pushing it?
I think that life, regardless of whether you're a musician or not, especially during everything that we've just lived through and are still living through, that's, COVID, for example, is a fraction of like the struggle that if COVID never existed, the struggle would still be there, and manifest in many forms. And, for me, music is just something to cope, really. And I think as a musician, and again, I say that lightly, I don't consider myself a musician, but I would encourage people to pick up an instrument or sing a song or do something that just puts you in a better place, because there's always going to be something that weighs you down at different points in your life. I mean, everybody's valuable and has something to contribute. And no matter how difficult it gets, everybody's got somebody that loves them. So.
Yeah, that's on that note, that's a great message. Keep it about music, keep it about expression, and keep it about people and the people that you connect with through music. So yeah, this has been such a great episode. All your stories, your journey, the process of making something, and the people that you've whose lives you've touched and have touched yours the same way. So I want to thank you again, Carlos. This our audience out there who's listening. This is Carlos Torres from Drywallero. And do you want to kind of plug where people can find you, your social media handles or your band handles, or where people can find your music?
On Instagram, I guess. Really, we don't do much else.
That's okay.
I think, I'm in a band called Drywallero, and then I do a project called Fake Birds, and I was in a band called SoCal. Those are probably the three that you can find easiest. This is going to be a very memorable experience too. And I do wish you guys the best with everything. I know, when I talk about you to people, I always, there's just people that do things, you know what I mean? Like, like DIY, that ethic, like you're just like, you have a wealth of experience, knowledge, and you do because that's what you do. And, so I'm honored to be a part of your journey as well. Because, I have a lot of respect for what you do, artistically, and your journey and your work ethic with respect to it. And I'm always down to support that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, the only thing we can do is try our best. And yeah, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
and for our audience, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Carlos Torres. And yeah, you'll be hearing from us on our next episode.
Welcome to our surprise segment. Now it's time for a visit from Madam Pepe.
Welcome to Tarot Time. You can call to me, Madam Pepe, and I am in this place to show you the good fortunes of our guests. What I do, I summon the informations combined with cards to have you and our guests receive learnings. Okay, let's go. All right, so now I'm going to shuffle. Now we have here intuitions for Carlos Torres. Okay, the singer, songwriter, creative guy. What do we have here for Carlos? What's this? Oh, wow. 4 of Wands. A very, very nice card. So, well, what is that to mean? What we're looking at here is that there's 2 people in the forefront or in the behind these 4 wands. Okay, they're celebrating, holding up flowers and wreaths, and there's some more people in the background. It's a joyous time. Okay, however, even though it looks like a party, 4 means stability. Okay, so when you have a table, the table is wobbly if one of the legs is not even. You need to have even legs on the table, and this is what this is. 4 is a symbol of stability. And so, yes, Carlos, your partying days are behind you, but however, there is so much joy to be found in the present moment and in the future. Congratulations, the wreaths are showing lots of fruit to be picked and harvested on. So you just keep music as your passion. Very little people have such talent for music and perseverance like you. So Carlos, if you're listening, keep going and you will see the fruits of all your labors and you will have prosperity. Okay. Well, that's it. I enjoy very much bringing good news and fortunes. Thank you for visiting, Madam Pepe. And okay, no more. That's it. See you soon. Bye now.
At Drywallero_cumbia.
Now it's time for our after show. This is where my bandmate Ybra and I usually chat about the recent episode or any random happenings in our band.
There's something I'll ask. If you don't want to talk about it, we just cut it out for sure. Just for our audience, you might have noticed that Abe has been the main host for a few of the podcasts, and then afterwards he got busy in his personal life. You know, he was kind of like all podcasted out. You know, I mean, it does take energy and it does take time, and I totally understand it. You know, I was inspired to bring up the podcast again, and just so you had something to do and you were more busy, especially after Sue passed away. And I think it might have helped initially, and just as a type of check-in or check-up, I mean, how have you been feeling since then? If you want to let our fans know who are curious.
I don't have as many bad days or as many bad times as before, but I have them. Just not, before it was like nonstop, like just almost nonstop feeling bad, feeling real hurt. And now I'm doing other things that take my mind off of them and accepting it a little bit more. And I have my moments, and I still can't like drive around and listen to music because Sue loved music, and of course it makes me reminds me of her. she loved our band and she loved music. So I really can't by myself. I'll listen to music with other people in the car, or I'll play music with us. But as far as driving around and listening to music, it just brings back too sensitive of memories of her for me to deal with. And I don't want to drive around crying and stuff if I don't have to. So I just turn the radio off. I can hardly listen to a song all the way through. I never do.
One thing you did mention was that I don't know if you really got into it, but you have said lately that you really like classical music because it's soothing. I mean, are you listening to that?
No, when I've just heard it, for whatever reason, somebody has it on.
Oh, okay.
At the right time, it could be a cool vibe, like something that's very relaxing.
Yeah. No, it can definitely be relaxing. I mean, that's what music can do. It can be very healing for a lot of people. And, I hope, man, for your sake, you can be able to listen to music, in peace.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, with time, I mean, it's only been since January.
Yeah.
Towards the end of January that she passed away. And
that's 3 months.
Yeah, so, it's still way too early for me to be, in my heart, in my soul, like, it's okay. It is what it is. No, it's a very empty feeling. And being with someone for 37 years and being together day and night is just not something you just all of a sudden accept and move on like nothing happened. You can't. It's impossible. So it's going to take time for that to get better and then better and then better. It's already gotten better somewhat, but it's not right. I mean, I'm still going through my trips at night when I wake up, when I'm by myself, because most people, if they're by themselves, they're used to being by themselves, or they're with somebody, and they have that person to feed energy off of and have someone to just vibe with. I don't have anybody to vibe with, anyone to feed energy off of, and it's just a very strange feeling after being with someone this close, 37 years, that they're gone.
This might be too personal, so just let me know. But you said that Sue's your soulmate.
Yeah.
When did you find out she was your soulmate, and how did you make that distinguish?
Well, I always knew, but
was there something she did, or things she did?
It's nothing like that. It's you never really know how much somebody means to you until they're gone. And we had our arguments and our problems, but basically I didn't know how much of a soulmate and how much of a closeness we had until she was gone, because then it really hit me. But I would know when we got in arguments and we wouldn't talk for a while. I know that we both felt really bad, and we'd make up.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. And I know you met Sue 3 years after your first wife, Ruth, passed away in a car accident, a very fatal car accident. And at the time, you mentioned this on the first episode, that you were drinking, and you mentioned you encourage people in our audience to not, at least you were saying for yourself, you're not going to drink this time. And I am just curious, because I have, in my early 20s, used alcohol and substances to numb my feelings and escape whatever I'm going through. Is that kind of what you did to cope with your first wife's death?
Yep. That's exactly what I did. I wanted to just get lost. I still feel like doing that, but I just know that doesn't work. So I learned from my experiences, number one. And number two, from all the drinking I did before, because I turned into a bad alcoholic day and night. And not just beer. I was drinking hard stuff and beer. I did damage to my liver that was still there, alcoholic liver disease. Now, losing weight helped because I no longer have that fatty tissue that I had also around my liver. But the alcoholic liver disease, the doctors told me if I start drinking again like that, my liver will go out. That's it. I'll pass away. I'll die. So I know I can't do that unless I want to die, So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad you had quit, for health reasons. But I guess looking back, and now having the resolve, knowing that it doesn't work, it was because.
Well, I'll tell you. Let me just tell you why it doesn't work, because it's better for me to explain it.
Okay.
There's days and times when, because I drank every day, and usually from the morning on, where I was in a good place, when, I had a good little buzz, feeling good, and I was all happy. Yeah, there was times where that did help. But what ended up happening is when you drink that much, and especially when you drink too much, it takes you to another place where it brings all the bad that you're trying to hide from and trying to hide inside you. It brings it out. And it brings it out even worse, because when you're real drunk, it would make me kind of go crazy and do really bad things. So that's why I say it didn't work, because it would backfire. Not every day, not all the time, but when you least expect it. And I did really bad things, bad things at times, where I'm lucky I'm not in jail. I'm lucky I'm not dead, things that could have really got me in trouble in this life. So I just can't be doing that kind of stuff. If I knew I could have a few drinks and stop and get a nice little buzz, that'd be different. But I can't. And aside from that, it wouldn't be good for my liver. So, but believe me, I miss it, and I would like to just get buzzed at times when I'm feeling bad and escape. But for now, I've been just trying to have tough skin and dealing with it. And just kind of like meditating, and not meditating like people that do meditation, in my own mind, and thinking about, God and all the spiritual things I believe in to help me, and to accept it, and think of the things that could help me get through it, which is knowing that we're all going to die. Sue obviously died younger than expected, but we're all going to end up there. So in her case, it came sooner than expected. And my first wife, it really came sooner. And there's nothing you can do about it. If it happens, it happens. And can't change it. That's one of those things. Can't change it.
Yeah.
So.
See, I just think what you've been saying is I guess it resonates with me a little bit. I dated someone who was an alcoholic, or maybe still is an alcoholic, and it was hard because he'd start drinking early in the morning before he went to work, and I just it was difficult because I was trying to ask him to stop, and he tried, but I just knew it was in him, that he had this huge urge to drink, and there was nothing I could do. And so I guess if you take yourself back to that time, had it been maybe your friends who are going, man, Abe, you're kind of going crazy at this party or whatever, was it kind of like there was nothing anyone can do or say to get you to stop?
No one really tried. When I got too drunk and started doing bad things, they just all get away from me, not come around or leave or,
Yeah.
nobody wanted nothing to do with me when I was in my bad parts of the alcoholism.
So do you think Sue helped because she was more vocal about it?
Well, the way Sue helped is she told me, I've had it. If you don't stop drinking, I'm going to start splitting when you get drunk like that because I can't take it. And then I realized that I did love her and I didn't want her to do that. So she's the one why I stopped drinking. I didn't want her to really leave. So that's why.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm glad that worked out because, for many couples and couples that I know, when one person says something and maybe the other person tries, but it's not enough, because alcoholism is so strong.
And it becomes a habit, like drugs. People don't think so, but it is a habit, like a habit that you can't just, whether it's smoking, alcoholism, drugs, those kind of habits, you don't just quit without repercussions. It's hard.
Yeah.
If you or someone you know is struggling from mental health or substance use, you can call SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-4375. SAMHSA is a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. This helpline provides 24-hour free and confidential treatment referral and information about mental and substance use disorders, prevention, and recovery in English and Spanish. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and choosing our podcast. It really means a lot. Our next episode is going to be very special. It's going to honor Juneteenth, and it's a blackout takeover featuring Black creators Paul and Alicia of the Vicurious podcast. They'll be talking about Billie Holiday and Nina Simone. So definitely tune in and check it out. It's going to be great. Please rate and review our podcast. And if you want to keep our podcast, Pepe and Ybra, going or support our band Glass Spirits, please join our Patreon. For just $5, $3, or even $1 a month, you can help keep us afloat. Our band name Glass Spirits is one word, spelled GLASSPIRITS. You can find us on most social media platforms just under Glass Spirits. The music you hear on this episode is our podcast theme song. It's an original song by our band Glass Spirits called Something Unspoken. You can download Something Unspoken from all major retailers or stream it on Spotify. Now, I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of our song, Something Unspoken. Again, thanks so much for tuning in, and see you next time on Pepe and Ybra.